my name is Tom, and I'm the director of the Prison Ministry Outreach, a nonprofit charitable organization here in Wilkes County, North Carolina. And I want you to meet my good friend Andy, who is now going to be the spokesperson for Project Freedom House. About 3 years ago, 12 men and I decided that we were going to try to make the lives of the inmates at our local prison a lot better by bringing them to church. And we thought by doing that, we would change their lives and maybe give them a little hope during their incarceration. But what's actually happened is these men have changed our lives. Their take on society, their take on their imprisonment, their take on being free for a few hours each week has livened up this whole congregation, and we are on fire to help these men. And after 3 years, I can tell you the transformation of the congregation and the people involved with these men is inspirational. And I hope that you will watch these video clips that we intend to put out. And I hope that it touches your heart and gives you a different perspective on incarceration and the good men that actually come out of prison. Thank you very much.
My name is Andrew. I'm 47 years old, and I have spent over half of my adult life in a penitentiary. I wasn't raised in church. I didn't know the Lord coming up, and I think that influenced me to get involved in drugs and things that I shouldn't have been doing at a very young age. In fact, by the time I was 12 years old, I was already smoking pot. It became habit forming by the age of 14. And from the pot, it progressed into harder drugs. I became, I guess, a cokehead by the age of 15. I started skipping school, and I would go get high, and just got into a lot of trouble. So much trouble that I eventually quit school, and it led me down roads that caused me to drink. And I guess by the time I was 17 years old, I was a full-fledged drug addict and alcoholic. Because of the drugs and alcohol, I've done a lot of things that I regret. I hurt a lot of people. Eventually, by the age of 21, almost 22 years old, I seen the penitentiary, the North Carolina prison system, for the first time. I was breaking into houses and doing shoplifting, doing whatever I could to fuel a drug habit and an alcohol addiction. And here again, the biggest thing I want you guys to know is I didn't know the Lord. I had two grandmothers coming up. My mother's mother and my father's mother were both devout Christians, and they drug us to church. I guess that's a pretty strong word, but they drug us to church, my brother and myself and a cousin, a couple dozen times. And here again, I think that lack of knowledge in my life caused me to go down some wrong roads. So at the age of 22, I found myself in a prison, and I wasn't there very long. In fact, I was there long enough to understand that I could make it in prison. It wasn't that bad. Of course, my stay wasn't very lengthy, but I was released. And when I was released, eventually, within a couple years, I was back into prison again for much of the same crimes. And I still didn't know the Lord, and probably, if I'm completely honest with you, I probably didn't even believe in God. So by the time I was 29, 30 years old, I had learned that using drugs cost a lot of money, and that was the reason why I was winding up in prison, because I was doing things to get money to support a habit. I worked, but a 40-hour job wasn't enough money. So I began selling drugs. I began to sell drugs and learned very quickly that I could afford to do drugs as a means of selling drugs. And well, by the time I was 30 years old, I caught a sentence that consisted of about 6 to 8 years. In fact, I was busted for manufacturing methamphetamines, and this would be my 4th trip to prison. I've done right at 6.5 years on a 6 to 8 year sentence, and during that time changed absolutely nothing about myself. In fact, I probably learned more about committing crimes and doing crimes in a better way to not get caught than I really even imagined. I learned more from being in prison on how to do things wrong than really correcting my behavior. So I've done the 6.5 years, again, unchanged. I was released from prison and went directly back to doing the things I was doing that ended me up in prison in the first place. It only took about 20 months from the release of the 6.5 years before I was busted again for trafficking methamphetamines. Now, I mentioned before I had already been to prison 4 times. This would be my 5th time going to prison. Well, in North Carolina, they have what they call an habitual felon. And what that means is if you repeat over and over and over the same crimes, committing felonies, eventually they habitualize you as a repeat offender. So with this new charge of trafficking, I was looking at, in short, about 18 to 20 years as a 39-year-old man. Good evening. My name is Andy, and I am the official spokesperson for Project Freedom House, Stories of Transformation. We'd like to thank all of you who have tuned in thus far to these stories of transformation. And isn't it heartwarming to hear real-life testimony about how good God is? Our goal here at Project Freedom House is to provide deserving inmates with adequate living, affordable living, in a faith-based home upon their release. We feel like they deserve a chance. As a former inmate myself, I know how hard it is to get on your feet once you are released from prison. So if you have enjoyed watching these videos as much as we have, please like and subscribe to the channel.